Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Plantrician Ed Series. I am absolutely delighted that you joined us this evening. We have such a special night. So often we do these Ed Series, and it's really educational. But tonight, coming out of Father's Day, we wanted to do something special, kind of a father-son Ed Series with my dear friends, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn and Rip Esselstyn. I'll do an intro for them in a minute, but I'm so glad that you could be here for this really special opportunity to learn more about their lives. And I'm hoping to learn some things I didn't know. We're going to dig in a little bit deeper and even go outside the bounds of plant-based nutrition tonight and talk a lot about some fun things, including athletics, because we all have an athletic background. For those of you that are aware, we've hosted the International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference since 2013, and it's been a tremendous opportunity to educate healthcare professionals around the world. And that was the project of the Plantrician Project. Dr. Esselstyn was our first founding board member of the Plantrician Project back in 2013. And so another reason to celebrate his life tonight as we remember those incredible opportunities that he gave us through his reputation and his experience to create the Plantrician Project, which has reached tens of thousands of healthcare professionals around the world. And you can join us this year at the conference, September 5th through the 8th in Palm Desert at the JW Marriott. You don't want to miss it. Not only is there amazing educational opportunities, but really this is an opportunity for us to sit around the table and have community. And Rip and I and S believe in the power of community, gathering together, sharing a meal. That's what unifies the movement, and that's what energizes us to keep going. So I encourage you to join us September 5th through the 8th at the PBNHC. I want to introduce, you probably all know Dr. Essie, but I want to give him a proper introduction as well as Rip. We are deeply honored today to welcome a pioneer, a living legend in the field of lifestyle medicine and plant-based nutrition, and my dear friend, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. He is a former surgeon at the Cleveland Clinic, where he directed the breast cancer task force and was the president of the American Association of Endocrine Surgeons. But really, he is known by all of us for his groundbreaking research in reversing coronary artery disease with a whole food plant-based diet, stepping into the fray with an incredible message that shocked medicine, that you could actually reverse heart disease. He was a former Olympian, and we've bonded on this, our Olympic backgrounds, but he was a gold medalist. I was not. 1956, Melbourne, Australia, rowing for Yale University, attended Case Western Reserve Medical School. And I've always loved S because he brings a unique blend of wit, scientific rigor, clinical experience, and this incredible moral conviction that everybody should have access to whole food plant-based nutrition. And he's continued to host a course at the Cleveland Clinic every 6 weeks for anyone that's interested in learning how to reverse heart disease. And he always makes it available to healthcare professionals. And he continues to do that work today. One thing I just want to say, I'm always impressed with S. He will take phone calls from anyone because he has a heart to help. And he's constantly taking calls from his home, helping people around the world reverse disease. And that comes out of his New York Times bestselling book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, which is a cornerstone of plant-based clinical practice and nutrition and cardiology in medical centers, in hospitals, and in homes around our country. And beyond all of that, as we're talking about tonight, Dr. Esselstyn is an amazing, dedicated husband, and I believe 64 years. Is that right, S?
I think it's a little over 60.
A little over 60, all right. He's a father, as we'll learn more about tonight. He's a grandfather, loves to sit in the stands and cheer his grandchildren on. And he continues to live as an example for all of us of lifelong vitality and purpose. He and his wife, Anne, are this living message. They work together, they serve together, and they embody this message every day. And he has a deep relationship with his son, Rip, as we're going to hear. And it's a testament to a lifelong family legacy. So S, welcome to the podcast. It's an honor to have you today.
Thank you, Scott. This is great.
I'm so glad. And on the other side, we have my good friend, Rip Esselstyn. Rip is a former firefighter, New York Times bestselling author, passionate health advocate who has, again, changed tens of thousands of lives and has really helped to fuel a movement. He first made headlines as a Texas firefighter who transformed his entire firehouse by introducing a plant-strong lifestyle that helped people lower their cholesterol, lose weight, regain their health. That journey became the inspiration for his first book, The Engine 2 Diet, and a series of best-selling books, programs, and documentary Forks Over Knives. And he was an executive producer on The Game Changers that have reached millions of people around the world. He is a former professional triathlete, continues to swim, and has recently, I think, set some world records in swimming a few years ago. He's a fierce advocate for health empowerment, and Rip brings kind of a masculine, infectious energy and an athlete's discipline and servant's heart to everything that he does. He's the founder of Plant Strong, which is such an incredible branding name, and he continues to educate, coach, and equip individuals and families and institutions to take back control of their health and their lifestyle. And so we are going to learn more about this relationship between S and Rip and how they are working together to build this Esselstyn family legacy that is also incorporates the entire family. And so they are amplifying this message through their family to audiences around the world. So Rip, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here and so glad to have both of you together and this opportunity to learn more about you.
Thanks so much, Scott.
So S, can you just take us back? So as we start the history, like just take us back to that kind of first genesis or aha moment that you had when you started to realize that diet was really important, more important than you recognized in health and disease.
I think that all happened about 1979 and 1980 when I was chairman of our breast cancer task force. I was finding that I was becoming increasingly disillusioned with the fact that for no matter how many women I was doing breast surgery, I was doing absolutely nothing for the next unsuspecting victim. And this led to a bit of what I would call global research on my behalf, and it was quite striking to recognize that there were really multiple cultures where breast cancer was 30 to 40 times less frequent than in the United States. And in rural Japan in the 1950s, breast cancer was very infrequently seen, but as soon as the Japanese women would migrate to the United States by the second and third generation, they now had the same rate of breast cancer as their Caucasian counterpart. Perhaps even more compelling was the information out of Japan in 1958. How many autopsy-proven deaths were there from cancer of the prostate in that nation of Japan? 18, the most minor public health figure I think I've ever heard. But 20 years later, 1978, they were up to 137, which still pales in comparison to the 28,000 who will die this year in this country from prostate cancer. Well, about this time, I began to notice that as I was reviewing these cultures, I would occasionally keep finding one where cardiovascular disease was virtually non-existent. And I said, well, wait a minute. Maybe there's going to be more bang for the buck here if we look at the leading killer of women and men in Western civilization, because if we can show people how to eat to save their heart, think of what we can do to, at the same time, diminish the likelihood of the common Western cancers of breast, prostate, colon, and maybe pancreatic. So that was the tip-off for, I said, you just can't tell people to do this. We got to do the research. So that was when I got, I think this answers your question about when I got started, and that was the background.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Essie, when you realized that, how quickly thereafter did you start incorporating nutrition into your clinical recommendations in daily practice? Was that?
Well, just about right away. I mean, by the time this would have been about, let's see, the first patient I had was 1985 was when I started the program. Yeah.
Wow. 1985. And how did the Cleveland Clinic respond when you started that?
Well,
then, during, or now, or in the
Then,
in
first.
between. And it's answer the same for then, 10 years after that, and even now. I'm an enormous threat to medicine's biggest cash cow. One of the most frequent phone calls that I get is, Dr. Esselstyn, I've been told I have to have stents. Dr. Esselstyn, I've been told I have to have a bypass operation. I don't want to have it. What are you going to do about it? So, well, it's what you're going to do to make the decision, but I will be happy to share with you what is the causation of the illness. You see, my real contention with the cardiovascular community, I mean, obviously they're well trained, they're conscientious, but at no time do they ever seem to get training in nutrition, either in medical school or in their postgraduate years. Because what is totally missing, presently, when you think about it, none of the drugs, none of the stents, none of the bypass operations have one single solitary thing whatsoever to do with the causation of the illness. The truth be known, coronary artery disease is a toothless paper tiger that need never, ever exist. And if it does exist, it need never, ever progress.
have you ever heard that before, Scott?
That is a new one, S.
No, but Scott, I think it's important to say that when he started seeing his first of 20, what would be 22 patients in 1985, you basically got permission to take, was it Mondays off of surgery? And so this was something that you started just like literally as a little side project, devoting Mondays to this preventing and reversing heart disease.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing, S. I'm surprised they let you take off a surgical day.
Well, he was that good as a surgeon.
I'm sure he was that good. So, Rip, how old were you? About 10, 11, 12?
No, gosh, no. I had actually just graduated from the University of Texas. Well, no, you're right. In 1985.
85.
Well, but I went to University of Texas in 82. So I was about 22.
Oh, you were 22. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you grew up largely in the family just when everything was normal, standard American lifestyle.
Nor does spare ribs, filet mignons, hot dogs, hamburgers, you name it, BLTs. I mean, yeah, all the naughty stuff.
Yeah, but we didn't know better, right? That was how everyone lived.
No, but it wasn't too far in the back of my mind, because remember, even during this time, my father had died at age 40. Excuse me. My father had his first coronary episode, his first heart attack, when he was 43. Then he lived long enough till in his 60s, he became diabetic. And then he developed prostate cancer, and from which he succumbed in 1972. So we had a pretty strong family history with which to be motivated.
Yeah. And so, Rip, I'm just curious, so you're in college and you start to see these changes in your family. What are you thinking as you're listening to your dad talk about these dietary changes and plant-based nutrition?
I was like, bring it on. I was so supportive. I was never rebellious. I loved the way he had the courage and the heart to go against the grain. And he didn't care, all the names that they called him, Dr. Quack or whatever it was. He knew that he was doing the right thing. And so, ultimately he proved all the naysayers wrong, which is, kind of a beautiful thing. But I was always supportive. And whenever I would come home for spring break, Christmas break, summertime, when I was at college, I would get exposed to these meals. Anne was really developing these meals. She was making this happen, at the where the rubber meets the road, and doing a phenomenal job of it when there was really, you had to be really creative back then, and there wasn't nearly as many products available to you on the grocery store shelves. But yeah, I loved it. I absolutely
So
loved
the
it.
whole family just dove in head first.
I would
Just like a good
say,
athlete, right?
absolutely. Everybody dove in. Yeah. Wouldn't you,
And
Andy?
Well,
did you?
there's a little more to it than that because when you looked at, as I just mentioned, my family history, and at the same time, my wife's family history, but when you combine both of those family histories, you had the whole mix. You had heart disease, you had strokes, you had cancer, and it just seemed that the way to possibly escape some of this at an early age was the data that was forthcoming from plant-based nutrition.
Mm, yeah.
Right. And Rip, you were an athlete at the time, right? Did you see an improvement in your performance as you started making that dietary switch? Did you notice?
You know, to be honest, no. And the reason is because I was 22, 23 when I
Yeah.
made the transition. And so at that age, what's your quote, Essie? They like to say I was still under the warranty. Yeah. Something, but you look at these guys, some of these Olympians like, Michael Phelps and others, and they're doing McDonald's and Burger King and who knows what. So you can pretty much get away with it at that age. So when I made the transition, I didn't feel any better. I didn't feel any worse. I just knew though in my heart that this was the best way for me to eat, not only to kind of prevent, as my father just mentioned, all the diseases that our family had been riddled with throughout the ages, but also at the time, the number one Ironman triathlete was Dave Scott, and he was a
Mm,
hardcore vegetarian. So
right.
I kind of followed his lead as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things, Rip, is I've worked with a lot of Olympic athletes and professional athletes. The one thing that they forget is that, they may not see a huge bump in performance, but their immune system, like recovery and injury prevention, are pieces that I think are radically changed with a plant-based diet.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, yeah. I very rarely got injured, got sick. I like to say I had an immune system like a Canadian moose.
That's a good one. I love that.
Yeah.
Nick, when you were growing up, were there like things that Essie taught you, your dad taught you about life, like core principles that really shaped who you became? Like you're so dedicated to athletics and excellence. Like what were some of those core principles that you learned from your dad?
Well, he was remarkable as far as his work ethic, just, kind of unparalleled to see his work ethic in whatever it was that he decided to pursue, whether it was medicine, whether it was going out into the country and chopping down trees for a wood business that we had on the side,
Hmm.
you know, you name it there. And then he, just his sense of ethics and doing the right thing. Um, I can remember, one of the worst things in the world was having to have a conversation with my father in what we call the new room, because you knew you were going in there to basically not get yelled at, but he would use this very, very deep, stern voice, and you just felt so disappointed.
Hmm.
And I can remember once I think I was 16 years old, and I had stolen some candy from a store, a grocery store, and I got caught. And my mom picked me up, and she said, "Rip, you're the one that is going to tell your father what you just did." And I, of course, burst into tears, and even before he walked into the new room to have this conversation. But heart of gold, so gentle, but yet very, very stern. And you kind of always had a pretty good idea where you where you laid with him.
That is great. Essie, I have to know real quick about the wood business. What that was an interesting comment there. I didn't know you had a side wood business.
Yeah.
Well, no, that was just something I thought would be kind of fun to have because the boys were growing up then, and they were strong enough. So was Jane, my daughter, pick up the wood after we split it. But we would. I had a pickup truck at that time, and then we would find some people who had fireplaces who wanted wood, and we'd see if they wanted our wood, and we would, we didn't make any money with this, but it was more of a character builder.
Mhm.
Well, that's not true. I can remember we had a little jar with a fund where we put the wood money, and we bought a ping pong table with
Oh, that's great.
the money that we made. But
Yeah.
you could buy either a cord or a rick, depending upon how much wood that you wanted. And I believe it was $40 for a rick, Essie.
Yeah, you got a good memory.
Oh, that is so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are those activities that really do build character, though, and this amazing memory that you have now, standing out there splitting wood together, right?
Yeah. And a lot of times in the winter, in the snow, cold fingers. Oh yeah. And that's what I mean. I mean, he'd be out there with that chainsaw, blue jean jacket, the ear guards just going after it. And I'd be like, when's he gonna stop? Stop, for Pete's sake. When is this man gonna like run out of fuel?
I don't think he does run out of fuel, does he, Rip?
Very rarely.
That's that's amazing. Do you ever remember a moment when you first realized, like, Dad, who was a doctor at Cleveland Clinic, now really is somebody that has a mission to reshape the world and is challenging healthcare? Was there a time in your life when you suddenly saw him differently or recognized he was on a different mission?
Yeah. I I had just graduated from the University of Texas at Austin, and he was giving a talk at I don't know, Essie, what group it was. It was like some sort of a men's group. And he invited me to come down. It was Sally Henkel's
Yeah.
father, Essie. And and I can just remember him spending a lot of time, on giving this speech. And again, this was early days. This was 1980. This was 1987. But by this time he already had proof of concept that he was able to show reversal of this disease. And I just saw him leaning in and putting so much time and energy and effort into this. And then I was in the back of the room and watching him give this speech, and I was like, wow, he is going after it, going
Hmm.
after it. And that was just the very, very beginning of what would become this massive explosion into him showing the world that heart disease is preventable and reversible.
Wow, that is a precious memory. And as that was the old days when you had the slide cartridge, right? And the different slides you could put in.
Absolutely.
And God forbid you drop that thing.
Well, Scott, I got to tell you, it wasn't quite like that. It was more like he had 10 pages that he read verbatim.
Is that right?
Oh yeah. Oh, he was fresh out of surgery. I mean, he hadn't been on the speaking tour very long.
This was not the great orator Essie had not been shaped yet, huh?
No, but he was just getting going.
Oh, that is great, S. That is so great. When was the first time you had angiogram evidence of reversal? Was that mid 80s or?
Well, there were several ways we knew that it was working. The first was in a 54-year-old gentleman who had heart disease as well as a partially blocked artery in his thigh. And so when he crossed the skyway to my office, when I first saw him, he had to stop 5 times so that the claudication would ease up and the blood would refill his calf muscle. But I was so focused on his heart, I sort of forgot all about his claudication. And so about 10 months into the program, one day at our meeting, he said, Dr. Esselstyn, do you recall when I first started seeing you, I had to stop 5 times crossing the skyway to your office? Yeah. He said, in the last month, it began to ease up, and he said, now it's gone. I don't have any more. Okay, I said, Don, back you go to the vascular lab, because at the start of this, when he had his claudication, I had gotten a pulse volume on his right ankle. So we repeated that now this 10 months later, and it had absolutely doubled. So we now had absolutely irrefutable, rock solid scientific evidence that food and food alone could absolutely halt and this disease. And then somebody would say, well, wait a minute. What about those statins? Well, I said, if you look carefully at the slide, look at the date. The statins came out in 1987. It was 1986 that this happened.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So that was the absolutely first moment, and it was only within about 15 months when we started the research. Yeah.
So what
Wow.
about what about angiogram? Was that in 89?
Yeah, I had to, I, let me just say, because it's going to conflict with a little bit of what I do now. The patients that I had in the original group were from cardiologists who I had a chance to present at their meeting, and a few of them put their toe in the water and sent me some patients. And the idea was that with these, when it came time to see how, because they were clinically doing better, it was time to do a follow-up angiogram. The patients themselves, who were pioneers, were insistent, wanting to know whether they had reversed. And obviously, so were the cardiologists who had sent the patients. So they leaned on me pretty hard, and we got them, and that's when we showed this. And we wrote that up in 1995. But the point that I'm trying to stress here is that just since 2009, when I got rehired at the Cleveland Clinic Institute, what has been fascinating is that when patients really want to know how they do, we'll probably do something like a stress echo, because there is no radiation and there's no catheter that goes up into your coronary artery. Because when you've been in this business long enough, you realize that there are patients who can die getting an angiogram, because the coronary artery was not intended to have a catheter up inside it. And so when I think back of the 1,800 patients we've treated since 2009, if every one of those patients had had a follow-up angiogram, somebody's going to die. That to me is absolutely unacceptable, which is why we usually ask, if they are curious, would say, let's get a stress echo stress test. And you'll find that after you've been on the program for 10 or 11 months, it'll be markedly improved or back to normal.
That is wonderful. I just love how you came across something that was life-changing for patients, and you just went for it. Went to the administration, asked for a day off, started a program simply. It wasn't fancy. You typed up 10 pages of notes. You read your notes to people so they would get what you had, and started this proof of concept. Sometimes when people start something new, they think that it has to be big, but you proved that, world-changing information can come out of just simple passion and doing the next best step, which is a great lesson for all of us.
I want to, Vic, if I got a moment here, I'd like to mention one particular patient that stands out a little bit. This was a gentleman who was my oldest patient I ever started with. He was 87 as a start. And he had been told that at age 87, he had to have open heart coronary artery bypass surgery. And he was convinced that if they sawed him in half to do this surgery, that he was not really robust at 87. He thought he would die. So he wanted to go plant-based. And every year after that, 1980, let's see, at age 87, every year he would send us a phone call to let us know how he was doing. 3 years ago, when he called, I was talking with me. He asked to speak with Ann, because Ann, he said, was going to give him some recipes. He needed about a whole bunch of recipes because he was having a party. Yeah. What was the party about? And he said, well, I'm celebrating my 100th birthday. That was
Wow.
2 years ago. We got another phone call. Dr. Esselstyn, I just wanted to remind me I'm now 102. This year we got a phone call from him. Dr. Esselstyn, I wanted to remind you that I'm now 103.
Wow. That is amazing, S. That's incredible.
Yeah. Isn't that something?
Makes all the
Going
work worth it.
strong. Yep. Incredible.
Plant strong. That's right. That's where it came from.
Mhm.
Hey, Rip, you and your dad and your family are a very athletic family. Um, and I'm sure that became a part of, the culture of the Esselstyn household. Your dad, it sounds like from even the wood business, he's always been disciplined and had that drive. So how did that common ground of athletics in your household shape your personal discipline, your drive, and even, your future? Like you grew up with a gold medalist, right, as a dad.
Yeah. Yeah. And I loved taking that in when I was in fourth and fifth and maybe even sixth grade to show and tell and
Oh, I thought that was cool, right?
and very proudly displaying it and him saying, yeah, fine, you can take it. Just make sure you bring it home. Uh, but listen, there's something about the discipline in becoming an athlete, setting a goal, and then trying to achieve that goal. And the only way you're going to achieve that goal is through immense amounts of hard work, being consistent, and kind of pushing yourself to the limit day in and day out. And I have always kind of seen myself as an athlete. I went to a high school that was the number one swimming school in the country at the time from
Wow.
my last 2 years of high school. Then from there, I went to the University of Texas at Austin because it was the number one swimming school in the country. I was a backstroker, and the world record holder and the American record holder in backstroke were there. And I was like, the best way to become one of the best is to train and get to know the best. And then ultimately, I was disappointed with um, my success as a pure swimmer, and so I transitioned. I think my disappointment into the sport of triathlon, and worked very, very hard at that for a good decade, and became one of the top American triathletes at the international distance triathlon, and that was quite exciting. But to me, there's just something about the bonds that are created with the people that you're, in there sweating it out with day in and day out that it can't be replicated to me in too many other scenarios, right? And you know
Yeah.
exactly what I'm talking about. So I love everything about athletics and pushing yourself and the discipline. And Essie was a great representative of what that, encompassed.
Well, I think that it's important to recognize here that this worked in two ways. That there was nothing that Ann and I enjoyed more than be supportive of our children, and they all were swimmers. They all were in all these meets, and there were some there were some winners when every single weekend we'd be at a swimming meet.
Mhm.
When Rip was at Mercersburg, we didn't hesitate to drive several hundreds of miles from Cleveland to be able to watch them swim in their championships. It was really such great feedback for us, and as well as we thought it was important for them to know that they had family support for what they were doing.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful balance of the work you're doing and then also putting family first too.
Mm, mm.
That's amazing, S.
Yeah. 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 And I will just dovetail that by saying there was nothing like being at the championship meet, whether it was, an NCAA's, Olympic trials, high school championships, and looking up into the stands and seeing Essie and Ann right there cheering you on.
Yeah, that is amazing. Yeah, just again, Rip, it speaks to the character of S, doesn't it? I mean, that he, and it really is like, even in medicine, he's led by his heart. I mean, he's
Mm,
intelligent, but he's always led by his heart. And I can see that even as you're describing this with his family, that he's led by his heart.
yep. Big time.
And when you're talking about that, that work ethic, that's exactly what you kind of you conjured up from your Olympic days to push into this work in plant-based nutrition, and you as well, Rip, with Plant Strong, right?
Mm, mm. Yeah, well, listen, I'm just doing my best to kind of carry that torch that he is in his own way passed on to me, and that passion. And the one thing I will say about my father is he has a singular focus like nobody I've ever seen. And when he decides to bite into something, he will not let go of that bone or that piece of kale.
Pit bull jaws, right?
Yeah. Yes.
As what were some of the real challenges that you encountered, and some of the really sometimes it's disdain from the medical community early on, right?
Oh yeah, when you're being called Dr. Sprouts,
What would
uh,
be your name? So Dr. Sprouts.
yeah, or I was once called by a member of the clinic who was out away from the clinic, and he was asked about what I was doing, and he said, "Oh, he's that quack." That he didn't get away with that. The clinic upper echelon found out about it, and he was brought to
Good.
he was brought to understand that that was not something that you did to other clinic members. That's the kind of thing that you just feel deeply. You feel that if it means that much that they can respond with such vitriol, they must be getting through. Why would anybody who was a fool would they ever worry about? But when there's somebody says, "Look, you don't have to have those stents,"
Mm,
those are some big bridges I had to cross, because was I confident enough in what I was doing with patients with heart disease that I could look them in the eye when they say, "Look, if I choose your method and I don't get that stent or I don't get that bypass, well, does it increase my chances of getting a heart attack or a stroke?" Because my family knows I've been told that I have to have bypass surgery, and they're all leaning on me pretty hard. Well, that's a tough decision for a patient. So you try to just lay out as fairly and cleanly and honestly as you can. And then what happens is you begin to build up the database. You say, "Look, what are your chances of dying if you eat plant-based? What are your chances of dying if you get a bypass operation? 3%. If you
mm,
do 500,000, that's 15,000 patients in this country who will die getting bypass surgery every
Mm.
year. And if you add that to the number who will have a heart attack after getting a stent, I mean, it's great. It's really rather striking that we know now that there's hardly any benefit from getting a stent, in terms of it doesn't prevent from a future heart attack, it doesn't prolong your life, and you may get some temporary relief from discomfort, but it's temporary. And you have to remember, look, a bypass or a stent has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the causation of the illness.
mm, mm.
That's right. That's right. And so, Rip, as we're kind of following the line of history here, 1985, 86, 87, when was the genesis of your idea to say, hey, I can maybe try this in the firehouse? Or had you started thinking about kind of taking on some of your dad's work before that? Um, when,
No, I really hadn't. And what happened is I was so just deep in my bones committed to this lifestyle that I started it at the age of 23. When I was 33, I got on with the Austin Fire Department, and all the other firefighters at the first station that I worked at, Fire Station 1, in the heart of downtown Austin, it had 18 firefighters. We had two engines, a truck, and an EMS unit. They said, "You won't last 1 week eating that way here." And again, I was old enough and I had a thick enough skin that I lasted and I lasted and I lasted. And then in 2003, I was at another station with a couple of my buddies. We had gone from station 1 to station 2. We transferred, and he had a cholesterol test, and his cholesterol was 344 at the age of 33. And so I just pulled him aside and I said, "JR," I go, "there's a better way. Look at my father's research going back to 1985 when he took these walking dead patients and basically brought them back to life. Look what I've been able to achieve." And I was still competing at a world-class level in triathlons up until about 2005, 2006. And so he was in, we huddled with the guys, they decided to go in. So we kind of rallied around this guy's high cholesterol and family history of heart disease. And that was how it started. So it was very, very organic, right? It was not pre-planned or anything like that. It just naturally happened in an effort to help a fellow brother firefighter.
Wow, that is amazing. And I'm sure when somebody says you'll not last, that athlete inside says, "Yeah, I'll prove it to you," right?
Well, yeah, it's like, watch me. But
yeah, exactly.
But I didn't say that out loud. I just was like, "Yeah, you're probably right." Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I know you weren't surprised by the results of what happened in the firehouse. But when did you think about writing a book around that?
Well, what's interesting is, so I challenged him to eat this way, not only at the firehouse, because we started making all of our meals at the firehouse, Plant Strong, but I said, "JR, also do it at home, and then let's get a follow-up test in basically a month." And so we did, and his total cholesterol dropped 148 points. He dropped 14 pounds. You know the story, Scott. All the intangible things, increase of energy, GERD went away, sleeping better, all these things. And so it wasn't too long after that we got approached by the local paper they wanted to do a front page article on the Metro section about us. And so they did, and that led to NPR doing a national story. And then the New York Times did a big old story. And then I got solicited by basically literary agents and publishing houses to write a book about the escapades that we were having at Fire Station 2. And so I did. And then that's where I really leaned on my father and what he had done, and his research and his patience and one of the things that we haven't talked about today is the due diligence that he did and the support that he gave these original heart patients, where he saw them every other week for 5 years, first 5 years. And then Essie, after 5 years, you decided that they would see you once a month?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Got a little loose, fancy there. But so I did the same thing, and I did a pilot study with 72 people. I got a medical director. We did before and after lipid panels, before and after weight, blood pressure, heart rate variance. I mean, it was awesome, Scott. And so the results were just so profound, and it just gave me so much more confidence in the direction that I was going, that this book would be an absolute hit. And then it was after I wrote the book that John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods, he read it. He loved the ethos and the whole positive vibe of it. And then that's when he invited me to come be a health eating partner at Whole Foods and basically retire from firefighting and really take helping people and saving lives to a whole nother level.
That is amazing. And you dovetailed right in with your father's work. Isn't that, who would have thought, right? The firefighter starts doing the same kind of work as his dad as a surgeon.
I know. Who would have thunk?
You know, I want to be sure that it would be remiss if I didn't say that, although it is, I'm so proud and delighted to be here with Rip today, that there are some other members of the family who have been involved with this, and in particular, with my wife, Ann. I never could have gotten this done without Ann. And at the same time, really somebody who's really picked up the mantle has been my daughter, Jane, who really, right now, she and her husband direct the Esselstyn Foundation. The Esselstyn Foundation is committed to really to educating the underserved schools, clinics, health institutions to really try to get the same information, the same word out. It's been going now for about close to a decade.
No, 5 years.
Maybe, no, it's 5 years. And we're just proud and delighted with it as a unit. It's able to really help get the word out.
And I just to piggyback on that, Essie, is it really is a way of honoring the legacy that Essie and Ann have given all of us. And all the programming is free to interested partner organizations, whether it's an educator group, public health workers, first responders. I recently did an event for the New York City Fire Department for their cadets that were just coming into the fire department. And you know, a lot of people don't know this, but the number one cause of in the line of death for firefighters, heart attacks, right? So I mean, these guys need it more than anyone. So, but anyway, it's a beautiful thing that has been that was started by actually their son-in-law, Jane's husband, as a kind of a legacy to them.
That is really beautiful. This, you know, it's rare to see a family unified like this around such an important idea. And that the family has taken on this like seminal idea that Essie had back in 1979.
Right.
Who would have thought, S, that this would have happened, that your entire family would have joined you in the journey to transform people's health globally? I mean, what a gift, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Great.
Do you think the criticism and some of the resistance from the public and the general community has like solidified your bond as a family around this? Maybe even you as father, son, as you've gone out and pushed against the medical
I
community?
think it's something, I don't think there's any question that in some way when you've got instead of just hanging out there alone, beating against the resistance, when you've got the whole family, it's it really markedly reinforces the message. And you know, one thing that to me is so interesting when you talk with patients, every single patient on the planet Earth who ever has had coronary artery heart disease at one time had no disease. So what we have as a job and a responsibility is to have those patients understand what has occurred or what they have made occur since the days when they had no disease. And so when they suddenly begin to feel that they are the ones that have been responsible for destroying the capacity of their endothelial cells to make nitric oxide, which is the great gas that is the savior of this disease. And they said, when they conceive and they get to understand that they themselves are now the locus of control, and when they are being empowered to absolutely halt and reverse this disease, the ball is in their court.
Well, Scott, I you know, you talked about kind of the strength of family, and I want to say one of the wonderful things, and I think the way that Ann and Essie have led in such a remarkable way is that everybody in the family follows this lifestyle. It doesn't matter whether it's myself and my wife and our kids, or my brother Ted and his wife and his kids. And now these guys are now great grandparents. My sister and her husband and her kids, my other brother and his wife and their child. So it is one of the most wonderful things when we gather for, like, we'll gather for Ann's 90th birthday party in about a month, and it will be the biggest Plant Strong explosion you've ever seen.
Woo! The secret, S, that you and Anne were able to share this message, which is so countercultural, with your children and grandchildren, that they embraced it in this way. I mean, that's different than so many families around the country. It's something unique that you all did. Do you know what that is? What's the secret ingredient, S?
Beans and rice.
That's right. Those short chain fatty acids that are created in the gut. I'd love to take a stab at that.
Yeah,
Scott. And I think it's, I think you saw it with the McDougalls and John McDougal, and you saw it with, Ocean Robbins with his father, John Robbins, and you've seen it with the Campbell family and, Colin Campbell and his children. I think when you're exposed to a human being that carries this much passion and truth and strength and courage with them, it's very, very easy to want to align yourself with what they're doing and what they're all about. And I think that with everybody I just mentioned, that vibration resonated with everybody, their wives, their children, their grandchildren. And so it's a pleasure. It's an honor.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to take just a couple of questions in a second. But before I do that, you both mentioned the word legacy and family legacy. And so I love to tease those things out. Like, what does that mean to you when you say, it's the Esselstyn family legacy? And how do you see that evolving, in the years to come?
Well, I think that if you look at it honestly as possible, you don't start out at least thinking at all about a legacy. That's what you start out thinking about is this is a terrible disease and it doesn't even have to exist. And it's very clear that the message that we can get to people, if they can follow it, this terrible disease can be destroyed. And you don't ever really think at all about legacy so much as you think about what we can do to have people understand how straightforward it will be for them to be the locus of control to stop this disease. And if there is anything kind of a legacy business that goes along, that just simply is something that evolves without any sense of purpose.
Yeah, I look at what just these two individuals, Ann and Essie, and kind of, the rock that they threw into the pond and the ripples that have now gone out that have affected literally millions of people just from what he was able to start in 1985. And think about how many people are eating healthier, are eating in a way that is reducing their carbon footprint, in a way that is sustainable, that is environmentally friendly, that is more in alignment with their values as a human being. And, I am doing my best. Like, I'm trying to do something very disruptive right now in the CPG food space, in creating a food line that actually elevates your health, doesn't destroy it.
Hmm.
Right? And it is basically food as medicine.
Hmm.
And that would be such a wonderful legacy if I could leave that to America and people, in addition to, all the other work that Jane has done and Essie has done. And, know that this work, to me started, with Anne's great grandfather who founded, or grandfather, my great grandfather, who founded the Cleveland Clinic. And then his son, Barney, who basically brought the partial mastectomy to this country in the 1960s, 1970s. And I think Essie was very much inspired by the strength of these people, to chart his own course as well. So you never know, right? Who you're going to affect and the ripple effect that's going to happen.
Well, I think what is really so
Yeah.
important has been the fact that what Rip is doing now. See, when people even well into this movement, it was very difficult for people to find foods that would meet the criteria that we thought were so essential. And now suddenly, here is Rip, who is developing this line of foods that absolutely gives the answer to these people. You find a plant strong product, you're going to be safe, it's going to be effective, and you don't have to spend your time hunting around the store for something you can find that you can eat.
Yeah, and these are the ripples that start when you throw the first stone in, S, that you would never have imagined.
Yep.
You took the action, and these, purposeful, passionate, and persistent action led to these ripples that continue to, change lives in ways that we still may not understand. The legacy goes on, and that's the power of a legacy, is it does not end. I'm sure some of these grandchildren will step in and continue this legacy because of what you have done. We have somebody here that said, thank you, Dr. Esselstyn, for saving my life, as we're thinking about legacy. I started your program 2 to 3 years ago. My doctor told me if I didn't change my lifestyle, I would have a coronary event that would have killed me, and you saved my life. So even here, on this evening, somebody that logged on, in our attendees was touched by your work, S.
Mm-hmm. The tentacles go far and wide.
Further than we realize, right, Rip?
Yes.
Further than we realize. Wow, I'm just really touched, S. This has been such a beautiful conversation. Somebody brought up such a good question, and I have two questions left, but this is a really good one. It said, what is Jane's story? She has done so much. Love her, and Anne is a woman warrior. And so maybe you can just share some of her story and how she impacted you, S. And Rip, too. I'm sure that she has had a huge impact on your life, too.
Well, when it all started out and I began figuring out what foods I wanted people not to have because they were the ones that were going to injure them, that didn't leave a whole lot that I knew about that we could eat. So I put this on Anne's shoulders, and because I'm a great cook at breakfast, I can pour the oatmeal. That's about it. But suddenly we had to have this absolutely creative mass of recipes, and that it began to come with Anne.
Jane.
And Jane, our daughter, has become also written 3 books with the recipes in it. So it really is, all I can just say is that Anne and Jane have written, because one thing when you lay out for a patient for the first time, the fact that you want them to stop any drop of oil, no animal protein, no dairy, really careful on the sugar, and suddenly they feel a little bit lost. And what is so exciting about speaking with patients at that moment is how you can reassure them. And especially in our seminar that we conduct every 6 weeks after I give my presentation, then Anne gets an hour and a half, really with an hour and a half of food and plant-based acquisition and preparation. And also what's happening is I can't tell you how exciting the foundation is with what my daughter Jane and her husband Brian have done to really make that a viable institute.
Yeah, Scott, let me just piggyback on what Essie has said, because Jane has been, like, in all of my work, Jane has been instrumental. And I've also had the opportunity to see her really grow and mature into this space as her own huge personality. And so, Jane spearheaded the recipe sections in the last three of my 4 books. Jane has been involved with every one of the immersions, the medical immersions that I did starting in 2010 with Whole Foods Unhealthiest team members. And so she has, been vitally important in all of those. Jane, as Essie just said, she is front and center with the Esselstyn Foundation. Jane has been throwing and putting on her own events. She puts on these basically women warrior plant-based events, usually does 2 a year, and they're just absolutely magnificent. And then Jane, she dreamed up this amazing idea to do her own cookbook. She helped me with my book. She helped Essie with his Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease cookbook. But then she did this plant-based woman warrior cookbook that became a New York Times best-selling book. And so Jane's creative juices are endless. She's got an incredible YouTube channel that she has with Anne. And I'm sure that a lot of your audience right now has listened to them, but they are an absolute wonderful duo. And you always learn something, and it's very entertaining as well.
That is amazing. So when you guys get together, what do you talk about with your get together? Swap recipes, new research.
All of it. Absolutely anything and everything. And, we have so many, there's so many, I've got kids, they've got kids, and it's just, you can talk, for a long, long time about what your kids are up to and what they're doing and how they're doing.
Sporting events and all the great things of life, right?
Yes, and adventures and backpack trips. Yeah.
Oh, that is beautiful. As we kind of wrap up, I was thinking, like, this is such a beautiful moment. And I know Anne is here too, and I want to include Jane in this as well, and anyone else. But for the two of you too, like, if you could, like, just take a minute and think through, like, maybe 1 or 2 things that you would just be really grateful for, and thank each other for, that shaped your life. So, Rip, something that you're thinking about and the way he lived that shaped your life, and S as well. And I know Anne is here, so we'll bring Anne in. She's off screen, but I want to include Anne.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I am so grateful for this man. Truly, truly a legend, but grateful for the example that he has shown me throughout his life, his consistency, his sense of purpose and passion. And I think you said it, Scott, you kind of were able to pinpoint it in a really wonderful way. But I think more than anything, his heart, right? And how he leads with his heart. And that has guided him and served him very well. And I would hope that I have half the heart that he has.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Rip. S?
Well, I think that Rip has said it wonderfully about it, Jane, our daughter, and also about what a force that Anne has been. But there are 2 people that I want to be sure to mention who we haven't mentioned so far. And they taught me an awful lot about standing up for what you believe in and what is true. And one is my father,
Mm.
and the other is Anne's father. Anne's father, it was interesting when William Halsted invented the radical mastectomy in 1882. He was such a towering figure that nobody dared resist him because he felt this was the answer to breast cancer. And for almost 100 years, it became the standard surgical error. Anne's father, single-handedly in this country, began to take on the fact that you could do lesser procedures, less mutilating, less painful, less disfiguring, and get similar results. And he eventually was proven correctly, but it took about 30 years. And the bruising that he took at various surgical meetings was almost embarrassing. But Barney Cryle has such a strong character. He absolutely cherished the fact that they would give him a fight.
That's great.
And my father was somewhat the same way when he started. He was the first one to start outside of a city. He started a rural group practice in upstate New York, which was really a figure of its kind to be such a pioneering event. And of course, the resistance was phenomenal. But again, Dad just seemed to cherish that, just like his friend Barney Cryle.
Mm.
And I think both of you and your family cherishes that fight a little bit too, don't you?
Makes it interesting.
Yes, it does.
But just the thing that's so exciting about it is you just fall back on the truth and the science. There it is. You can't. It's all been published in peer-reviewed scientific journals. It won't go away.
Yeah, we got a pretty good foothold.
Yeah, we sure do. We have a very strong evidence-based foundation.
Yeah.
Well, also we have to. It goes without saying that we want to congratulate you, Scott, and Tom Dunnis and your team, because my gosh, when you think about the fact that how many years you've had Plantrician going now, the number of lives that you've affected by people who have come from around the world I really have to applaud your effort.
Yeah, thank you, Es. We appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, plant strong. We keep rolling, don't we? Yeah, I've been so
Absolutely.
inspired by this visiting with you all and learning more about your family and hearing about this legacy, the ripples that are continuing to go around the world. And in my heart, it just makes me recommit even more, I think, than before to what we all share to be this gift to the world, which is a plant-powered plate. And to just with more intensity and more persistence maybe than ever before to go out and push a little harder, right? Just like athletes do.
Amen to that, Scott.
Yeah, this has really inspired my heart. I thank you both very much.
I have a final closing comment, if I may.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you to do one other thing too, Es, so go ahead.
And that is that I really think that what we see in the future here is an absolute seismic revolution in health. And the seismic revolution in health is never going to come about through another pill, a drug, a stent, or a bypass. But the seismic revolution will come about when we in the profession have the will and the grit and the determination to share with the public what is the lifestyle, and most specifically, what is the nutritional literacy that will empower them to absolutely annihilate chronic illness.
And that is a mass movement that shifts the tectonic plates of culture, right?
Yep.
That is the seismic shift. And Es, I want to end with your review of the greens, because I think that is classic. Everybody loves that one.
The green leafy wrap is what you're
the
looking
green
for.
leafy wrap, Es.
Yeah.
Bok choy, Swiss chard, kale, collards, collard green, beet greens, mustard green, turnip greens. Wait a minute.
Wait.
Bok choy, Swiss chard, kale, collards, collard green, beet greens, mustard green, turnip greens, single greens.
We're getting a little.
When I get back, but last third try.
I'm surprised you asked.
I haven't practiced this in a while.
I know I know I caught you off guard.
Dill, collards, collard green, beet greens, mustard greens, turnip greens, broccoli, cauliflower, cilantro, parsley, spinach, and arugula, and asparagus.
Oh,
all right. we know it.
There it is.
Oh, there it is. All right.
Esselstyn Foundation, they get this in
Bok
there.
choy, Swiss chard, kale, collard green. Okay, got it.
I love it. That's right. Esselstyn Foundation. That information is in the chat. And Rip, tell people where they can find out more about you, Plant Strong, your work, your food line.
Yeah. So thanks. First, Scott, thank you for having us for this really wonderful event. It is an honor and a privilege to be on the Plantrician Project educational series. Well, firstly, I have a podcast that I've been doing for 5 years. It's called the Plant Strong Podcast. We have a new episode that drops every Thursday. Feel free to tune in. Great information. Our websites, the food line is plantstrong.com. Our events are liveplantstrong.com. And Instagram handle is at Rip Esselstyn. And then Go Plant Strong is our Instagram handle as well. And there you have it, Scott. Thanks.
Oh, that's great, Rip. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. This was pretty special.
Thank you. Oh, it's been really special for me too. And thank you, Ann. I know you're off screen.
Ann, are you going to show us your face?
Here comes.
Here she comes.
Obviously she's been over the stove.
I'm cooking.
What else are you doing?
Ann, what is that in your hand? Is that like the magic? Tovolo.
Put that in the chat. It's the best.
What is that? Is that chocolate on the end of that?
Oh, that's balsamic vinegar. That I cook mushrooms on one side, balsamic vinegar them the other, and then flip them, and they're done.
Oh,
I love it. That is great. Well, thank you, Rip. Thank you, S. And thanks to your entire family for being such an inspiration for all of us. And we just pray that your work continues to ripple out around the world. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon. And thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. I hope that you've enjoyed this. Again, please join us at the conference. And hopefully you've been inspired to go out and do more. And as we've learned from Essie, just starting and doing something can have a profound effect. So love you all. Thanks and good night. Thanks, Rip. Thanks, Bess. Appreciate it. Thank you, Brooke. Thanks, Jill. Thanks, Tom. Good night, everyone.